Welcome to our channel, the School of Solidarity, where we host conversations and dialogues with intellectuals. It's a heart-to-heart and a soulful talk, as I call it. I have today a very esteemed guest with me, and I'm honored to actually hosting him, thanks to Brother Nadeem, who's introduced us. So Professor Nana Oppong from Ghana introduced him because I don't know where to start from. He's the president of many things. It's a long CV that he sent me. But the interesting thing is that he's written over 40 books in diverse fields such as quantum physics, advanced logic, education, philosophy, and law. And you are an authority in due diligence as
Yes,
author of The Illegal and of Law, Poverty, and Global Justice. What I have actually highlighted here, something interesting, which I'll come back to, but you are currently the leading expert on narratives of competence for healthy, competitive, and sustainable global development.
that's
And
correct.
yes, mashallah, you have an extensive CV and your books, some of which, I would mention, uh, you are the author of groundbreaking book entitled The Paper Nations and the Renaissance of Africa. Then Microbitic Physics, Quantum Lights, and the General Rate of Presence. Then you are the father of symphonic theory of intelligence, which caught my attention because
Yeah,
intelligence can only be acquired when it is learned as part of the rhythms and the norms and the everyday practices of the dominant community of the person. And it's just resonates with me because we
yes,
also in the integral, you've seen my work, we talk about
yeah,
local context. But
yeah.
anyways, welcome. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here. And tell me,
Yes.
you are the president of the African Dialogue, something, one
The
second.
distinguished scholars of
Scholars
Africa.
of Africa.
Yes.
Great. So tell us about your work. Introduced him because I don't know where to start from.
All right.
This overlap of, physics and law,
And
everything.
biology and economics. And did you even
Yes.
know I also do music as well? So I do a lot
Brilliant.
of
So
things.
I understand the transdisciplinarity of things, which is, I
Right.
think,
It's normal.
it's now the norm as well because we cannot make sense of so many things. So we have to understand many disciplines. So tell us who is Professor Nana Oppong?
All right. So that's very interesting. First of all, it's my great pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
And I want to congratulate you on your dedicated philanthropy, should I say advocacy for welfare in economics? And it's not just for Pakistan, but it's for all human beings.
Of course.
And when I read some of your poems, I was so moved when you were talking about all of us have to come together to create miracles. Miracles don't just happen. They don't fall from the sky. God doesn't
Yeah.
give us miracles. You know, the Quran says, verily, Allah does not change the condition of a people unless they change themselves. So
Yeah.
yes, I think you
And
should
I think
continue.
you are also trying to say something similar in your latest book, but we'll come to the
That's
authority.
right. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have been very interested in reality. And reality is, as you know, just one. We divide it into physics, biology, economics, but we don't experience reality in divisions. We
Yes.
experience it as a whole. And in being interested in reality, I had to get into science, into law, into all kinds of things. I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm a scientist by training, and I'm a musician by performance. And I'm a
Wonderful.
human being by
Do you think
Distinguished
it's
Scholars of Africa is just an organization of scholars who are interested in resolving many African issues. You see, for the longest time, the most oppressed and downtrodden people in the world have been Africans. Now I can't say that. Now we have other people joining the league. But for 400 years, slavery, colonialism, issues, racism, as you know. So
yes?
when I left Canada to go to Ghana, in about 2007 or so, I realized that we had to deal with the issue of the causes of the problems of Africa. Part of the problem is what I call intellectual poverty.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote or founded Nichemathics, which is the study of the niche. And the
Yeah.
whole idea of the Nichemathics is we should focus on our local resource, local talent, local capacity and cooperatives, and then work from there. And as we come together collectively, then the aggregates become the so-called district, regional, national, and then international. And Africans in particular,
Mm-hmm.
because of colonialism and slavery, they are used to what I call more or less. So 70% is good enough, 60% is good enough, 51% is good enough. It's more or less. People are late for appointments. Oh, it's okay. I showed up, didn't I? That kind of attitude and the fact that we live in a world oppressed and so on, that's what we're trying to solve in Africa. So I've been interested in distinguished colors of Africa because we want to change Africa. We don't want to talk about African issues. We want to change African problems.
Yeah, so I'm part of a community and we actually work on the regeneration of Africa. We call it Regen Africa because most
Yes.
of my colleagues are from Zimbabwe, South Africa, Nigeria
All
as
right.
well. So
Okay.
we look at the alternatives, what are available. Like when I talk about solidarity economy, it's also an alternative model of economics and coming from
Okay.
Islamic economics, right?
All
So
right.
I have a colleague in from Zimbabwe, and he has
Mm.
actually published a book on narconomics as well. So I
Yes.
understand all these alternatives.
Right.
So
Right.
Ubuntu as the African philosophy as well. So I'm
Yes.
familiar with that.
Very
My
good.
question would be, or maybe I just think about it, all of us have been saying this. We are trying to, the source is one, we are all connected, Ubuntu, Moahat, I write about it, which also says that, spiritual brotherhood, we are all connected,
Yes.
and all that. But looking at the state of our world nowadays,
Yes.
I mean, this is the dialogue I would like to have.
Of
You are
course.
an
Of course. Of course.
intellectual, but I would like to
Yes.
have this heart-to-heart dialogue.
Yes.
Do you think humanity uh, has ever grasped this concept of us being connected? Are our voices lost now that people like you, me, and others who've been saying that we are all one, humanity, and Ubuntu, and we are connected? Where is this going? Because our world is more divided than ever, like fragmented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the answer is very clear. All of
Mhm.
us, because we have language, we have spirit,
Hmm.
we understand our humanity. Everybody does. Now we fight one another because of an oppressive, unjust world.
Hmm.
So we ignore our humanity and we go for the bread and the milk and the sugar, and we push one aside and another aside because we want to succeed. I think the solution is what we're going to talk about, which
Mhm.
is how do we lead? How do we succeed? How do we become effective in uniting people, getting people to cooperate in a more just, a fairer world? And I think that's where we have failed as reformers.
Hmm.
Most reformers go ahead with the declarations. Africa is free, Ghana is free, we declare independence, there should be justice, we are not going to IMF, we're not going to World Bank. We make all these declarations. But the question is, how do you do it?
Mhm.
And that's where we have to come scientifically. Scientifically, the world is run according to sequences and rhythms.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand the sequence and the rhythms, and you just stand there and say, I want, I want, I want, the Quran says it's like extending your hand to the water and telling the water to come to you. It'll never come.
Mhm.
You rather have to go to the water and then fetch it with a cup, with a vehicle or something. Anyway, so how do we go? I think we have to start working on authority.
Okay, I was coming to that. So this is your latest recent book on
Correct.
authority as
Yes.
the Lord of economics, right? And
Yes.
you say that the modern economy is authored, and the writer in any case is the most important factor of the production. And
Yes.
also, interestingly, you say that the modern economy is a written performance. I mean, I think we've all said that, we know that. And the wealth of nation, as you say, is not founded on the natural resources of nations, but on the juristic resources of the nation.
Yes.
Question is, I mean, okay, I'll let you tell us about authority.
Mm-hmm.
Understood. In the global theater or global setting now,
Yes.
and I think, who has the authority? Do you think America has the authority? I don't think so. Because who exactly has the authority? Are we talking about the nation, the authority on a personal level? I understand. And I feel like more than ever before, an individual has some authority. I mean, look at social media. We can say whatever nowadays, right? So it has kind of spread horizontally in some way. But I know you're smiling. I'm just saying, on a personal level, but on a
Yes.
global level, then on a national level, like as a nation has the authority, and then there are the global characters or, the
Right.
performers or the
Yeah.
authors of the economy or the charter. So it's quite, confusing as well because
Yeah.
then we've recently whatever happened is happening, and I must mention that we've seen ICC, ICJ, who has the authority? Nobody can stop anything. So over to you now. Please enlighten us. What do you
All
have
right.
in mind when you say authority?
Yes, yes. But we have to go into definition of what authority is.
Mhm.
Authority is superior competence plus legal fiat. And it's not just a legal fiat, final legal fiat. So the fact that you have competence in something doesn't make you an authority. You must marry that with the power of the Supreme Court. Meaning when you speak, that's it. Everybody obeys willingly or unwillingly. That's the definition of authority. So people have access to social media, they can say whatever they want, but there's someone who can shut them up, someone who can silence them or give them the power to speak and so on. That is the authority. Now, let's come back to personal authority. I think personal authority is very important because the bigger authority is built upon personal, communal, clan, regional authority. Now, on the issue of who has authority in the global economy, see, the global economy is written in the first place, money, which we all want. We live in a very monetized world. Money is created by authority. It doesn't come from the sky. And some monies are created more than others. They have more value than others. So by Congress or by whatever you call the legislature, they create money and that money becomes dollars, it becomes pounds, it becomes euros, it becomes whatever. And by authority, that money has more value than any other money. You get it? Credits created by authority, regulations, sanctions, everything created by authority. Even how to become a lawyer, an engineer, an architect, whatever is created by authority. The curriculum, certification. Even what you want to fly, you can't fly unless authority gives you the airspace and move, security, radio, communication. Now, who has authority? Authority is measured by aggregates. So you look at finance. Whoever has the competence and the final word has authority. So SWIFT, who controls the SWIFT? Banking, who controls financing? Who controls NASA? Who controls research in biology, pharmaceuticals? Who controls agriculture? So we have to look at authority by the aggregate of the authorities in the various sectors. If you add all of it up, whoever has the most is the authority. And I'm saying in my book, the more power you have as an authority, the more stable your economy is. Because
Hmm.
authorities arise because they fix contingencies. Let me just give you an example. I take a painting that nobody knows what the value is. We can haggle over it all the time for a long time.
Mhm.
Is it worth $10 or $100 million? Authority shows up and says, based on XYZ, this painting is worth $500 million. All of a sudden, the painting is worth $500 million. Debates have stopped. No more doubts and uncertainties because authority by fiat has declared the value. And that is what's happening in the economy. The economy was written mostly from Britain
Mm-hmm.
when during colonialism. They started with the bills in India, and that's how we got the document. It now has become the pounds, the dollars, and thing. It's written. Not only is it written, it deals with dispute resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
It fixes rewards and responsibilities. So the modern economy is like football league. You know how to play football. You're talented, but you need a coach, you need a manager, you need a referee, you need the television stations, you need the payment structure. All of it comes from authority. So now, if you know how to play football, you have some kind of a personal authority, it doesn't get you into the league. It doesn't make you a superstar. It doesn't make you a professional. That is where authority comes in. So back to the issue of what do? We want to change the world. But the first thing that we have to do is to make sure our constituents, if I go into a mosque or into a church, that the tailor, the seamstress, the chef, the carpenter, everybody has authority in what they do.
Mm-hmm.
If they're incompetent in what they do, then all your efforts, you give them money. I know you do microfinance, you try to help with loans and so on. That's excellent. But if the person you give the loan to is incompetent, if the person you give the loan is incompetent, how long would the loan go for before you're back to square one? If you want to organize someone to become disciplined, they have to get some type of authority over their life. If they're drinking, smoking, doing all kinds of things, you can't get them organized for a long time. So personal authority is very important. Then it goes to clan, company, association, family authorities. But the biggest authority is the one who has technical superiority plus superior legal power.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I've not spoken too much, right?
No. Okay, so my question to you is that if the smaller or resource poor nations, they
Yeah.
rely on natural advantages, right? So
Yeah.
how can they then pivot to building authority in a globalized system dominated by established powers? I mean, like, say, for example, look at Sri Lanka's and Pakistan's debt crises, and that reveals vulnerabilities in nations, right? Because
Yeah.
they lack the authority. So how
Yeah.
can resource poor countries build authority without failing into dependency on global powers? I mean, we've seen globalization is kind of failing, but
Yes.
then what? I mean, now the new authority could be there's this counter movement or BRICS nation. Do you think the power can be shifted like this?
Yeah.
So
That's
I mean, we know about the authority, who has the
yes.
authority, but
Right.
how do we then counter these issues, like for
All right. So
smaller resource poor nations?
very good question. I think it's very clear that the world was created by God in truth, and what is true in Ghana or Canada is true in Pakistan, in USA, and everywhere. So the first question you ask is, how did people get authority? And what are the attributes of authority? You see, authority is competence. Authority is completeness. When you start something as an authority, you complete it. Authority is impersonal. You can't go doing corruption and stupid things and think you have authority. Authority is continuity. Whatever you start, you must continue. Consistency. Authority is finality, meaning you should always excel. So these are the qualities of authority. Somebody gets to be authority by having these attributes, whether you like them or not. So then the first question we ask is, do we have those attributes in our educational system? If we don't have those attributes, so that our engineers should be the best engineers, our doctors should be the best doctors, our financial consultants should be the best. That's the first place we start. And how many engineers do you need to have excellent bridges? How
Hmm.
many mathematicians do you need to have excellent economics? How many? Then what program do you have in place? One of the things that I want to introduce is the word GOES, goes, authority grows, organizes, enables, and secures
Mhm.
every authority. So if you're sitting down in Sri Lanka or Ghana or Pakistan, you say, I want to be an authority, or Allah, make me authority, but you're not working on your curriculum, education, trying to get the future generation to have symphonic intelligence, then you won't be an authority. So the first thing we have to do is education.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Very important
Mm-hmm.
because there are
But that
nations.
means dismantling the whole systems now, right? Because
Absolutely, but you have to start. If you're sick, you have to start looking at the causes of the infection.
mm,
And if the water is a problem, you stop drinking the water. You can't say, "Oh, I want to be well, but I like the water, so I keep on drinking it." If
mm,
eating is a problem, a certain type of food, you have to stop eating it. We need to start changing. You talk about soul,
mm-hmm,
spirit. You know, when we talk about a person wanting to be close to God, the person has to do is acknowledge your weakness.
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
If you say to yourself, you're strong, or I'm proud, like the devil, you say, "Oh, I am very proud. I know who I am." No, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge the problem, then you can solve it.
Hmm. Okay, I want to ask about symphonic theory of intelligence. Let's talk about that because intelligence is a symphony, right? You're saying
Yes,
it's a language,
yes,
an order
yes,
of play that requires a series of. But symphony, you know that you need many characters, you need people. We
absolutely,
cannot create
absolutely.
symphony on our own, right? Is that
No,
what you're saying? So, what is the symphonic theory of intelligence then? Can you enlighten us, please?
right. The first thing about symphonic theory of intelligence is everything is if this, then that. The definition of intelligence is the ability to figure out the next step from the existing step. That's all. So in music, if somebody plays pum 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 pum, then you say pum 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 pum. Because he played this, you played that. Because he plays that, you played this. Symphonic theory requires you to be connected to reality, be connected to a community, to be connected to language, to culture, to religion, to philosophy, to spirit, to everything, and to listen. So you can play your role. You cannot be a good musician if you're always talking, you're always playing. No, you listen. But it is also connecting to reality. So, for example, physics is connected to biology. Biology is connected to economics. Economics is connected to music and carpentry and masonry and and. In symphonic theory of intelligence, a child should be raised to have maximum sensibility. The smartest people are those who, when they're growing up, they're exposed to infinity. They're not limited by chaos and stress and confusion and superstition and stupidity, but they expose intelligence and to beauty and to greatness. For example, if someone tells you, beautiful child, you're a child of God, you are connected to God, God brought you on the earth, your mind is different. Like if you're an ugly child, you're connected to the devil and you are frustrated, different. So we need to create this environment of beauty, environment of possibility, of
Mm-hmm.
brotherliness, of connectedness, of all things, then the child grows up very, very intelligent. So intelligence is not just a matter of reading books, it's reading people, reading the environment, reading hearts, souls, spirituality, everything that is connected to reality.
Hmm.
So we should stop this old school, should I say, limited, myopic kind of structure hierarchical way of learning and
Mm-hmm.
open people up to reality, one God, one reality, one truth, one science, one humanity, one destiny, all beautified in time, rhythms, sequences, and possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I get that, but how do we do that? That
So
has
the
been
first thing is,
that has been humanity's challenge forever, right?
okay, so now there are people who are actually doing it. So the first thing is when a child is being raised,
Mm-hmm.
even before the child is born, and when the child's in the mother's womb, the conversation ought to be of intelligence. The conversation ought not to be conflicts and superstitions. When the child is brought up, there should be harmony, there should be qualities, there should be fairness and justice and treatment. A child who's raised in a fair, open, caring family gets to be more intelligent than the child who's raised in an abusive, oppressed family. The child should be exposed to a world where everything is possible. You see, one of the things that my brother Nadim and I we found out in microbitic physics was the infinity of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Everything comes from one God, from one thing called the microbate, and all the differences that you see are just changes, arrangements that result in the dead and in the living. So when a child is brought up in a world of possibility, you can do anything, but you have to be logical. You have to be structured. You have to follow things in a logical manner. You have to be truthful. If the child's raised up in a world like that, then the symphonic theory is what they raise up with. That's how they grow up. That's how they become. So we can start with that way. A structured, harmonized educational system based on a home that is not oppressive and abusive, a home that is good, perhaps spiritual, a relationship that treats the woman as a person, equal
Again,
person. I
authority
grew up
plays a role here as well, right?
exactly. See,
Okay.
I grew up with my mom, and my mom was an authority, and I loved my mom. She passed away, may God bless her soul.
Um,
And I didn't see a mother who was a woman. I saw a mother who was loving, care, and an authority. Whatever she told me, I listened, even up to now.
mm,
What's the
mm.
type of family we should have? The type of relationship. We don't want a relationship where the man is abusing the woman and the woman is the one always doing the menial labor and yet she gets no reward. And you say you have symphonic theory of intelligence? No.
Mm,
So
mm,
what am I saying? Those who want to reform and revolutions should start looking at education. They should start looking at authority. And they should start structuring educational system to the types of people they want.
mm,
There are, in many nations, dedicated colleges and schools and universities to ensure that they raise the types of authorities that they need. If
mm,
you want a pharmaceutical, you want to be a giant in pharmaceutical, then how many pharmacists do you need? What research labs do you need? What type of books should they read? What type of school should they attend?
mm.
You can't just say, oh, we want to increase our pharmaceutical capacity, but you
No.
do nothing about the fundamentals. And that's
Yes.
what we do in Africa, in Asia. We sit down and we talk about development, but the only way we think of development is to go and borrow money. But can you borrow intelligence? Can you
Yeah,
borrow intelligence?
I
You
know.
can't borrow authority. You can't. You
Yeah.
can't borrow spirituality.
So
You
there
can't
is
borrow
a term,
enlightenment.
yeah, there is a term in Arabic and Urdu as well. We say tarbiyah, like,
Tarbiyah.
So talim is like education, but tarbiyah
Yes.
is this development you're talking about, which
Yes.
is the concept is lost because even in our homes as well, because, remember, as you were saying about your mother, she was the
Yeah.
authority, the
Exactly.
moral values they were instilling in us, we still
Yes.
hold those values very dear to us. But
That's
nowadays,
right.
because the mother is always busy, she's also working, she has to, be the sometimes breadwinner. Most of the households have single parents. So
Yes.
that element is now lost.
Yes.
So we have to bring that back. And of course, education, the fault line is in the educational system, right? Because most
Yes.
of the countries have the colonized still, those systems in place, which are very colonized. And we are still, and I think the disconnect here is the local values or the culture is different to what is taught to your child, the Western education. What do you say about that? Because then there's this fragmentation, right? Because your culture is saying something else, but you are now learning all the Western values or the
Yeah.
imperialistic, educational systems.
Yeah.
Do you think?
I wouldn't want to call it, I think that's the problem. I don't want to call it Western values. I think we are all westernized just because we all eat Haagen-Dazs, we eat ice cream, we all eat McDonald's, and we all eat all of this stuff. We all watch the same movies and listen to music, dress the same way, and use the same technology. What is happening is not westernized versus cultural. What's happening is people are confused as to how to be a human being. And there's so many ideas. Even in Islam, you have so many madhabs and sects and this. So people are very, very confused. And in Africa, what is an African? That is also debatable. But what is very important now to know is we know science, things work, engineering. We build bridges, we build cars and airplanes and medicine. These are not debatable. These are not Western concepts. These are real realities. So the first thing that we have to do is choose that which is excellent in our cultures: honesty, brotherliness, sisterliness, right? Caring for one another, hard work, discipline, sacrifice, and then marry that with technical competence in the fields that matter. But what we do is we sit down and we complain about the past and we were colonized and we were slaves and we were looked down upon and Western. The Western is not controlling your intelligence, your brain, your spirits, your heart. You can do something. We're sitting now complaining, but what about the education? Who said we should read the same books? They're not forcing us with guns to read the same books. Why can't the Minister of Education change the books?
Change the
In
books
Ghana,
to what?
pardon me?
Change the books to what?
All right, so figure out what is in the books that is not helping us. Is it stupidity? Is it incompetence? Is it laziness? Is it superiority of one race over us? Are we feeling inferior when we read those books?
So that's exactly what is in the books at the moment, because that's
So
where
don't
I
read
was
the books.
bringing in the Western model of education, right?
No, but don't read the books. Who tells you to read the books? Change the books, write new books. Come, they're publishing companies. If you don't want to read the books, come on, go online. Let the children read about, for example, African equality, African superiority, history of ancient days. Look, make it up if you need to make it up. But why are you still reading books that put you down? Why are you still reading books that don't raise you up? Why are you suppressing your heroes and praising the heroes of others?
Yeah,
There is
exactly.
no white there is no white man standing there and telling the black man to read a book about white man, but black man is reading the books about white man. Why?
But isn't that,
Islam.
well, isn't that about the authority again? The regulations, the global authority, because all the systems are coming from there, right? It's also a
Right
matter
now.
of authority then, right?
But we have to get authority. If you keep on saying, I don't have authority, I don't have authority, I don't have authority, but you don't do anything about getting authority, you'll never get authority. So the first thing you do is you start with the books. I have written a book on how to think like a lawyer. Let that be a textbook. It is in fact a textbook. I've written a book. You've written a book. Let the books become the textbook. Let the books positive
Yeah,
books
see,
on
that's
God.
the problem. Yeah, that is
It's
the
not a
problem.
problem. It is where we start. We start lobbying our government to stop being foolish and start being intelligent. And I'm using these words because I want the point to be made that we are our own enemies. We
Yes.
have enemies, but we also are our own enemies, and we have to admit that. And the first thing that we do is to start and saying, listen, there's some things we can do, we should do them. If you're sick as a person, the first thing the doctor will tell you is you change your diet, change your lifestyle, change this, change that, change that. You can't say, oh, I'm sick, so just give me the medicine. Some
Right.
things medicine can do, something lifestyle change can do. I'm saying to you, governments can start changing the books.
Hmm.
One of the things that you find when you go to Africa, even in Black communities around the world, in Canada, USA, is a lot of young Black people have no self-confidence because
Hmm.
they feel inferior. And the books they read make them feel inferior. The communities they live in make them feel inferior. So where are the books about equality and fairness and the superiority of humanity and the oneness of humanity? Where are the books saying God is great and you're from God, you're the child of God? Where are the books that say your ancestors were great before, you can also be great again? Where are the books that say my mom told me they were also born, everybody's born, white, black, yellow, green, everybody's born? Where are the books that say that? Where are the
Hmm.
books that say that you are going back to God? You know, the Quran says, oh, thou soul at peace. If you love Allah and then you're dying, it said, you being pleased with God and God being pleased with you. Welcome to thy Lord. Welcome to paradise. Where are those books being taught in the schools? No, but rather it's in pornography and nonsense and slavery and ex-slavery, and we are down, we are poor, and then they keep on blaming the world. What about power, knowledge, symphonic theory,
Hmm.
soul,
Hmm.
spirit, solidarity? What about that one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think we have to set the example. And I think I don't know, I'm bringing this in, but Namibia set the example when they said we are not giving, all the 500 uh, US citizens they were sending back because they're saying if America is not giving us visas, we are not giving Americans visas. And I was like, this is it. You have to stand up
That's,
for yourself.
that's authority. That's how you start getting authority.
Exactly. So I know it's a process.
It's a process.
Yeah, we might not see the results in our lifetimes, but I personally feel we are in this transition. The collapse is taking place. We are actually witnessing the collapse now. I don't know if that's being fortunate that we are seeing the collapse, but we are in that moment now. So I was also looking at this book you've written. You are actually the founder of the collaborative theory for human evolution, right?
Yes, yes,
And in there, I was reading, you've written, when it comes to the evolution of man, it is neither ecology nor biology, but intelligent and
yes,
enduring collaboratives or
yes,
cooperating intelligences, right? We've spoken about that. But seduction theory of power. So,
yes.
evolution of incompetence. What do you mean by this?
What you see is a lot of people are not growing in terms when in reality, you grow up with someone, you go to the same school, 20 years later, you see them, they're alcoholics or drinking or criminal or whatever. It means they have not evolved, but
Mm-hmm,
rather they have regressed. There's a lot of cultures that are going backward. There's a lot of
mm-hmm,
people that are going backward because they haven't figured out how to be authority in their own lives, whether in their family, at their jobs, in the community, whatever else they're doing. So they're not evolving. And what are they doing? They're acquiring negative skills and knowledge, distraction, division, confusion, desperation. And all they do is look for ways to destroy others and to destroy themselves rather than to build communities. These people exist, these cultures exist. So you find whole communities where you go there and there's total failure and chaos and failed states because they have acquired regressive, should I call it evolution, negative evolution? That's what happens. Then you have people, of course, who have understood how to get better healthcare, better communities, how to get better financing, better families, better schools, and so and how do you do it? It is the sharing of competencies.
mm,
Exactly what we're doing now. You have competence. I have competence. We add it together, then we have a show, we have a discussion, and there it goes. And I go back to music. It's all about that. You play the guitar, somebody plays the drums, somebody sings, somebody is a poet. We come together, we have a band. Football, you play number seven, some plays number nine, defense, off, and so on. So evolution can only occur when we cooperate intelligently with skills that contribute. We can't just say we're equal, we like each other, we love Allah, we love God. No, no, it doesn't
mm-hmm,
happen. God created a world of competencies. So, like, if you want to cook biryani and I have rice, it's not enough to cook the biryani. I have to bring other resources, right? Other ingredients. Those other ingredients come together, then you have the biryani, then you have the fufu, then you have the ice cream, and. So I think evolution only happens when we help others to be competent
mm-hmm,
and they help us to be competent. Then we cooperate. Then we cooperate for good. We don't cooperate for bad. We don't cooperate for criminality. We don't cooperate for distraction, for hatred. We cooperate for environmentalism, friendliness. We cooperate for equality, for justice. So that's the business of God, the business of justice. You know, the chief imam, national chief imam of Ghana, Sheikh Sharabutu, and we wrote a book called The
I saw that.
Economic Principles.
Yes.
And what we said were three things only, three things. It says in the Quran, and this is also biblical as well, and it's everywhere. It says, know good, love good, and do good.
Do good.
These are the economic
Yeah,
principles. If you know
exactly.
good and you love good and you do good, everybody will be fine. But some
Mm.
people know evil, they do evil, and they love evil. And then they
Yeah,
say,
can I stop you here? Because it all sounds good. I write like this as well. But I have come to the realization. Now we're talking about authority as the Lord of,
yes, yes,
economics as well,
yes.
right? So doing good is not a principle in the global economy because I think that's why I won't just say Muslims are behind, because if you are doing good, ihsan always, then you won't have the authority. Don't you say just
But no,
always doing good? Because those who are authoring the economy, the global agenda
yes,
economy,
yes.
they don't believe in this doing good, right?
No, but that's why you should do good to your community, but be
Yes.
competent in what you do.
Okay.
So, for example, you want to be an arms leader, I mean, you want to have weapons of war, then be very competent in what you do. So you're very strong in terms of military power. I'm just using as an example. So
Okay.
anybody wants to come and attack you, they'll think twice before coming. If you want to build cars, build the most durable, adorable cars that everybody's, oh, I want that car. You can't build some stupid car and expect people to come and take that car. So you become very competent. You have the means then to be able to do good. You see, competence is a foundation for charity.
Hmm.
If you're incompetent, your bank will collapse, your business will collapse, and you can't do the charity that you want to do. If you're incompetent, your educational model will not work, your government will not work.
Hmm.
So the first thing that people have to do is be competent, then you can be good. So the good is dependent on competence, authority. But once you get authority, what's the purpose of authority? It is welfare. It is to help people. You're not getting authority so you can be lord of the universe or to be a dictator. You acquire a lot of money and you die and you leave it. No. So the first thing is seek ye first authority, and all other things shall be added unto you. That means competence, superiority. And you can be authority in your house.
Hmm.
You can be authority on yourself, in
Hmm.
your community. What is stopping, for example, Ghana from being authority in Ghana? Nothing.
Yes. Hmm.
Nothing. We just sit down and we have no authority. When are we going to get authority? Why do other people have authority? No, you can have authority if you get up and say, I have authority. It's just like sitting down and say, I'm so depressed. I'm always going to be depressed. Life is depressing. Stop being depressed.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
yourself I'm not depressed.
So that's on a personal level. I understand that. But we're
No,
talking
but
about
institutionally, I'm just saying we have to start looking at science, be very serious about science, look at the various sectors and say, how do we become an authority in engineering,
Hmm.
in agriculture, in aviation, in communication, in computing, and then make sure we educate enough children, acquire those competencies, and then enable and secure them.
Hmm.
It's a project that you have. Look at China. How did China become China? I'm sure they use the same model, which is they built people. I use the word built on purpose, who is sufficient to do the job. How
Yeah.
many engineers do you need? And they got the engineers and the factories and they set it up and enable an environment.
Hmm.
But you know, right now, if you go to Africa, there are no nations in Africa building authority. They're
Hmm.
not. Why? Because they don't even know, for most of them, don't even know there's such a
Hmm.
thing as authority. They think it's all about getting land, labor, capital, entrepreneur together. And then when you have oil or gold or resources enough. In the modern world, it is not those who have resources, natural resources, who rule. It is those who have intellectual superiority with legal fiat who rule.
Yes.
They tell you what to do.
Yes. So if I ask you for a practical suggestion, I know you've developed this subversion index, the first in
Yes,
the world.
yes.
Which tell me about this.
Subversion index. See, when you're doing anything, you usually think of the positives. You say to yourself, "Oh, I want to build a factory. I have these are my strengths and these are my opportunities and weaknesses, and I have money and I have labor and I have all of this stuff." And you're very happy, and everybody praises you. Say, "Yeah, it's a project." But
Hmm.
what you forget, Quran talks about well, asr. By time, everything that you do, you lose, except if you continue advise one another as to truth and patience and constancy. What happens with subversion index is everything that you do, you will lose it.
Hmm.
Empires will fall, businesses will collapse, authorities will fall, except if you figure out your weaknesses along the way. Every strength is a position of weakness.
Hmm.
So your resources are your limitations, your capacities are your limitations, your competitiveness will ebb over time. So the subversion index tells you you can be subverted by the very thing that if you strength today, tomorrow become your weakness. So along the way, you plan knowing that as a young person, you become old.
Hmm.
Someone with a strong side, you'll be blind. Your company would be edged out of the competition because of new developments and technologies and algorithms and applications and societies that will change. So you plan for that. You
Hmm.
anticipate your weaknesses in the future. You plan for that. It's like future vulnerabilities. And then
Right.
you work against it. So you don't just sit down and rest on your positives, you also work on your negatives. So the
Right.
subversion index tells you if you don't work on it, you will be subverted in time.
So has this been implemented anywhere in organizations or the government in Ghana?
It's now that I think the new government is there. I'm going to talk to them and implement. There's a lot of things that I want to implement, but everything has its time. But it is out there. I am happy to collaborate with anyone who wants to prevent being subverted to
Mhm.
have a subversion index and also have the due diligence index, which tells you how to manage and to make sure that whoever you're giving money or projects to is qualified, is competent. And you know what is very important about authority? One of the key attributes is driven.
Mhm.
That's spiritual, that's emotional, that's personal. If you're not driven, you can have all the resources in the world, nothing happens.
True, true that. I think we need this subversion index everywhere in the underdeveloped countries, I think.
And you know, it's one of my books on how to think like a lawyer. There are only three laws that you should know in the whole world, and this is Western law. First law, you have the right to be wise.
Mhm.
Second law, you have the right to be foolish. And third law, wise people have the right to exploit foolish people, but they must do so legally.
I know. We're seeing it manifested everywhere.
So that's why you need a subversion index so that you're not manipulate, nobody can manipulate you legally. And legally means knowledge, sequences, systems, algorithms. They come to you and hello, how you doing? Is everything okay? Nice, nice, nice. Before you know, you lost everything.
Yeah, I know.
So
Great.
we need
Wow.
authority, we need knowledge, we need collaboration, but we also need to know that we can be subverted.
You are an institution in yourself, mashallah.
Thank you. And you
Yeah.
too. Yes,
No,
yes, yes.
nothing compared to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I hope and pray that we can implement all these models because I think our words are getting tired now. We need,
That's right. That's
yeah,
right. That's
we
right.
need
I
this.
think the first thing that we have to do is educational reform. The new generation of people should be smarter, collaborating, cooperating with one another on science, on truth, on fairness, on equality and justice. And then the world will change.
Yeah, I think they are smart enough. They are not being guided enough.
All right. Then we should
Yeah,
give them the guidance they need.
that's it. That's it. Thank you. I hope your
Thank you
legacy
very much.
continues.